Back to another lesson of the Logos and Letters. My name is Liam, and we're going to continue on with chapter 7. So just to summarize, and I might even pin a comment, there's been a lot of talk about contraries and opposites and things that correlate and whatnot. Let me just make one thing clear, because it might be exactly what some people need to hear at this point. So you have things that are relative, okay? This is a supreme genus. In chapter 4, you will remember that we looked at the 10 categories. And the categories are supreme genera. They're the highest, broadest, genus. They're fundamental parts of our existence and our reality. And one of them is relation. Okay, relations are accidents that exist inside substances, and I'll speak more about one particular relation that some people might be thinking about, but let me just get through this first. So it's a supreme genus, it's a category of its own, and it has a rule. Inside this, it has a rule, and it's correlation. Okay, I'm just going to write a brief version of it. So correlation. So that rule is like a test to find out if things are relations, if they're relative. What the rule is, it just says that they point back to each other. And this Greek word, there is a Greek word around here somewhere. It's antistrephonta or antistrephi and things like that. Yeah, antistrephein, right? It's like to carry back to each other in the sense of the Greek, but it just means that really point back at each other. So there are two things, X and Y, and they will point back to each other. Okay, X and Y. So for example, if you say master and if you say slave, all right, master, slave, the two correlate. All right, they point back at each other. If you say either one, the other one is comes to mind, either consciously or unconsciously. Some people, as they grow, may not yet know these, but they will as their intellect develops. And I'm thinking more of like children. Okay, an infant won't know yet that maybe even what a slave means or what a master means. Okay, so as we grow older, we'll figure these things out. But if you say there is a slave working for that company, you will know that there is a master of the slave. If you say employee, okay, you will know that there is an employer. All right, they correlate, they relate. Now, so there's this rule in this category called correlation, and I've just explained it. So the relatives, correlatives, okay, you can call all these sorts of relations correlatives if you want. Okay, they're relatives that are correlatives. But there's also another type of thing that we've been speaking about, isn't there? We've been speaking about contraries. Okay, contraries. Now, contraries are not exactly in this. They can be, but contraries are sort of different. Contraries are the furthest distance in any particular genus. I think we actually drew this example here. So you've got a genus. Let's say it is color. Okay, the genus that we're talking about is color. All right. What are the two extremes in color? Well, without making this overly complicated, on the opposite ends of the spectrum, now some may say red and blue. Okay, some physicists may say red and blue. If you're speaking about light waves and that sort of stuff, fair enough. We're speaking about just color as it is before our eyes. And we, on one end of the spectrum is black and the other is white. Okay, and he's given this example many times before. All right, or what he's saying okay, if you're really scientific and you really don't want me saying black and white, sounds too simple, sounds too like elementary school, what we're saying is complete brilliance, okay? Brilliance in the true sense of the word, something that illuminates and is bright and shines, okay? So the whiteness, okay, is contrary to something that is not brilliant, okay? So if you're scientific, that's I'll throw you a bone and say that, okay? But it still stands firm that black and white, these are contraries. They exist in the same genus and they're just the furthest distance away from each other. I think we also, if I remember correctly, looked at animals and creatures. But of course, the beauty of and magic of YouTube means that you're free to go back and watch that video even now if you want, whereas I can't. I've got to teach this lesson. So I hope I'm right in remembering that we did creature and animal too. I'm going to move on. So we've got contraries. Now, contraries can also be a type of relation. All right, contraries can also be a type of relation. Now, it's not like they're mutually exclusive. Okay, you can't only have a pair of contraries. Okay, and they just cannot be a correlative, a relative. Sometimes they do. There is two particular interesting examples that he gives. He gives the examples of knowledge and ignorance. Okay, knowledge and ignorance. And he gives the example of, what was the other one he gave? Knowledge, ignorance. Oh yeah, virtue and vice. Arete kaikakiai. Alright, so virtue and vice. Alright, so these two sort of imply each other. They point back at each other in a way, if you say knowledge and ignorance, and if you say virtue and vice. But they're more just a relation, okay? And they're contraries too. You can either be at one end or the other. Same with this, okay? You can be at one end or the other. And I mean, color always exists on a surface. So any point on a surface that you pick out, any particular point, it can be black or it can be white, but it has to be one or the other. It can't be some black-white, okay? And if you think, oh no, it's gray, all right? But that's a middle ground, okay? Gray is a middle ground. It's an intermediary, which we will learn about soon. So contraries are its own thing, okay? We learned about contraries in chapter 6. They're a type of opposition, and we will spend a lot of time looking at those because they're so important for argumentation that logic spends a lot of time fleshing them out. Okay, so contraries are its own thing. Relation is its own supreme genus, and correlatives is a rule that exists in that category. All right. So don't stress too much. Of course, right now we're looking at the category of relations, prosody, and then like chapter 8, I believe, is qualities, the next one, and then chapter 9 is what I just call remata, and then chapter 10 will be opposites, where we deal with all of this stuff fully, all together. We bring them all together and we compare and distinguish. Okay, so you've got a lot to look forward to if you want to become more masterful with all of this stuff. It's almost necessary. So before we get to all the fancy ways you can argue and create syllogisms and whatnot, this stuff, not to sound cliche, but is your bread and butter. All right, it's the tools in the workshed. So don't worry too much. But we will continue on. So if you remember, he was speaking about the wing of the bird. Now we know that there is a wing of the bird. Having wings is a like a defining feature of being a bird, even if the wing has evolved or mutated or become something different, like like on a penguin. Okay, they're called swimmers. All right, and even if they become sort of useless and they're only good for short flight, like on a chicken, that can sort of like launch itself 20-30 feet but then come back down to earth, it still has a wing. So that's true, but it also, there are wings of other things too, like bees. All right, so bees have wings. So we can't say that wing points to bird. All right, we can't say that. We can say bird points to wing, fair enough, but a lot of other things point to wing as well. Wing points to many more things besides bird. So what does wing point to? What does it correlate to? Well, if you say wing, it's actually really simple. You just say winged creature or winged creature. Okay? So winged creature. Let me just write that down for you. Okay, that's what it points to. Simple as that. But like if you say a winged creature correlates to wing, of course. You know, that's where this comes from, right? So they correlate. That's precise language. Okay. You're free to think that, but this sounds so vague. It can mean so many things. That's true, but what matters is that it's correct. What matters is that the logic is unassailable. So that's what matters here, and we're going to look at some more examples. I'm not looking forward to it because it's difficult. So it's difficult to translate into English. So tate to petronautu legatai. Right. So in this way, the wing of it is spoken, and he's speaking about birds. So ugare ornis, right? So it shouldn't be spoken of the bird in particular. Alla he peteroton esti, right? But it should be of the winged, right? The winged peteroton esti. Polongar kai alon petera estin, and he's just reiterating something that I jumped ahead and beat him to. So, and there are many other things. Polon alon. There are many other things. There are many other things that have wings. Okay. Haukisin ornithes, that which are not birds. Hosteian apo dothei o kaios. Thus, it should be given more conveniently. Kai antistraphai, and it should correlate. It should point back to hoyon to peteron, petero tu peteron. Alright, so the wing of the winged is the wing. Okay, so the wing of the winged is the wing. Kai to peteroton, peteroi, peteroton, and the winged is to the wing, the winged. Okay, so that's a literal translation, but in English, it's just saying the winged is of the wing, and the wing is of the winged. All right, so by saying winged, peterotoi, right? Where is that? Or peterotu, by saying the winged, we refer to the wing. All right. I know this language is so unnatural, and that's fair, but it is so precise. And iote, so sometimes. And sometimes, moreover, onomatopoeia, if you know that word in English from your school days, onomatopoeia, it's where we make a word for things. We might say bam. All right. When we're writing a story, we might say bam. Okay, I'm so sorry that's so unneat, but with a mouse it's kind of difficult. So bam, someone gets struck by something, maybe a fist, maybe a kick. We write bam, onomatopoeia. So onoma is a name, and boyain, to make, all right, to create. So to create. So sometimes, moreover, it is so name making, isos anakaion, is equally necessary. So sometimes it's equally necessary to make a name, not unless, ian me kai menon e onoma prosho okaios an apodothai, right? So not unless there's already a fitting, convenient word, a name, regarding what should be given. Okay, so if we have the word already, winged, we don't need to make up a new word. We've already got it in our language, and the more words in your language, the more likely there is already a word that perfectly fits what you're looking for. You might just need a dictionary, or these days we can use AI just to ask it a question. Hey, is there a word that reciprocates with this? And I'm sure it will spit it out for you. And if it doesn't, you might say, is there an archaic or obsolete word that can be used for this? If not, for some reason, you just have to onomatopoeia, boyain, to make a word, right? Hoyon to pedalion, right? So pedalion is like a rudder on a boat. Let me see if I've got a lot of boats in water, but I don't think any of the pictures show a rudder. Not really. The rudder is the thing that you can turn to change the direction of the boat without having to use like oars. No, I don't think I'm gonna have anything that shows a rudder. Not really, but it's sort of you can see it's this thing there, and you would usually have something that can turn it left or right. But it just looks like he's happy to go wherever it takes him. So let me just clean this up because it's getting a little bit out of control here. So pedalion tu ployo ian apodothe. So the rudder of the boat. If it should be rendered the rudder of the boat, uk okaya he apodosis genetai. So it wouldn't be fitting to say the rudder of the boat if you go like this. So if you go rudder and you go boat, you might think that there is a correlation if you think of rudder, and then you go, okay, well, rudders exist on a boat, fair enough. But then you go to boat, and then you ask yourself, do all boats have a rudder? No, all boats do not have a rudder. For example, there are cases of boats on the Nile River and other powerful rivers where they don't need a rudder per se. They can just have someone there with like even in Venice, you know how they have those enormous oars, like 20-30 foot long, and they sort of steer it just by holding that in the water and going about. So not all boats are ruddered. Okay, not all boats are ruddered. So if you say boat, doesn't correlate to rudder. All right, just as if you said sail, if this was sail, okay, this is another great example. If you said sail, you might think of boat. It implies boat, but not necessarily the same way this way, okay? Especially these days with sails have become not obsolete, but they've been replaced more and more by engines, so it doesn't reciprocate. Both are perfect examples here. So we would need, what would we need to do? What would be necessary to do? It would be to make a name. All right, we're going to leave it there, and we're going to look at name making especially with boats. Next, what to take away from this? What to take away from this chapter? Let me throw you one bone. Okay, before we wrap it up, this might seem pedantic, and whenever it gets really pedantic, I like to give some food for thought. I'm just going to give one for this. Okay, we're talking about relation. We're talking about correlatives. Can I give you one example of a correlative before we go? And it's an important one, especially for the Christian audience here. You may have even been thinking about it as well, and I did mention it. Okay, it has all to do with God. Now, there are two parts to what I'm about to explain, and it's all based on this chapter. Okay, if you want to reverse engineer the ideas of some of the defining ideas of Christianity, it's in this chapter. What you're looking at right now is what the greatest theologians poured time and effort and sweat over, okay? Possibly even tears, who knows? So, think about God. For a Christian, the Holy Trinity comes about, right? The Holy Trinity. So, in the Holy Trinity, who are the three persons? We say there's God the Father, the Holy Spirit, and who is the second person? So I've said the first and third, not in any particular order, but who would be the second person? That is Christ the Son. The Son, right? So if we say the Father reciprocates with Son, right? Or child, okay? So father and child, fair enough, all right? In this case, it's the Son. If you say Son, it can reciprocate with the idea of Father. These two, if put into a pair, reciprocate. They correlate. Now, this is a relation. Now, you might go, excuse me, are you saying that God has an accident because relations are accidents? I'm not saying that. It does imply that, but I'm not saying that. So God is perfect, okay? We say God is perfect, and you can't be perfect if you have an accident. If you have any sort of accident, that is an imperfection. God is perfect, so he can't have any of this, right? He has a real relation. We'll explore more of that in a second. It's the answer to this problem, and it's a very easy answer to explain, especially when you consider all three persons in themselves or are persons. I was lost for words because I've already said the answer, right? They are persons. It's God in different persons. So, I mean, we'll get to theology in a bit, but what I'm saying is there is a relation. And from this relation, you can prove that it is a substantial relation. Substantial relation, right? All relations that we're talking about are accidental relations, right? Between substances, right? So the accidents that exist in the substance, this is all chapter 5 stuff I'm combining with chapter 7 stuff, okay? I'm synthesizing the two. We have accidental relations that are in our substance, okay? But God has real substantial relations in his own substance between the three persons. We call, and Jesus himself calls himself the Son. Was it necessary for him to say that? Is it necessary to call God his Father? It's not necessary, right? It wasn't necessary for God to decide to go down that route. But for a pedagogical tool, for an educational tool for his chosen people and for his chosen ones to understand him better, this fits the picture perfectly. To say, I'm the Father and he's the Son, these two persons. Why? Because A, we understand the Father-Son relationship really well, but B, there's another one. It's to imply that there is some form of relation between the two, and to imply as well that one reciprocates with the other, That's another one. But finally, I would say that it leaves the door open to understand that if you're looking at one, you're looking at the other. So what I mean by that is just the common human experience of looking at a child and seeing the parents in the child. In a way, by God calling himself son and father to himself, he's saying, if you look at me, you look at him, right? And if you ever look at him, you can look at me. If you know him, you know me. If you know me, you know him, right? In that sort of way. And that's a very human and real way to understand something. Why? Because we experience it with accidents. Like she might look like her mother, right? And that's her particular accidents, matching the particular accidents of her mother. However, because he is a substantial relation with his father, and his father is a substantial relation with Jesus, his son, in that way, what you're looking at is a substantial incarnation of the bodiless God. Now, I know these are big terms, but I can say with absolute certainty and honesty that I can prove everything that has been said, and not just me, this text that we're reading, right? As we go through, it proves these points. No, it doesn't. That's silly. What it does is shows how I arrived at those conclusions. Just by reading it, the idea itself will just pops into your head. You don't even have to do any work. There are sentences that are lying there, like I've shown between chapter 7 and chapter 5, and you just connect a couple of dots, and your brain just does it automatically, or with a little bit of effort. Maybe you go for a walk and you connect the dots, right? Or you have a nap and you wake up and you realize. And yeah, so as we go through this, we'll explore more of that high theology, but that's why Jesus can be perfect and still be human and God at the same time. And that's why God can be perfect and have a relation with the Holy Spirit and with Jesus, because it's a relation with himself. So it's a substantial relation. For more on that, I've written tens of thousands of words on that topic, in detail specifically. So if you want to read that and see it step by step with references and whatnot, feel free. Otherwise, you just have to keep going through these lessons. I'm going to leave it there. It's a bit of a longer one for many different reasons, but when we come back, we'll finish a good chunk of this, and then I might do another lesson today of this, because as you can see, this idea of referencing, correlating is a big one, and it goes on for a while. So I'm actually looking forward to that. Hope you are too. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, si semper fortis in opere tuo. I'll see you next time.